correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but do people have to accept that they're being recorded, or does it just get recorded?
I think it just gets recorded. I think if anyone has a problem, they can say it, but or they can leave the call. We just have to inform people they're getting recorded.
Yeah. So for everyone that's on, I have officially started recording. I don't foresee our meeting today really lasting over half an hour, but happy to have it last over half an hour. If people have questions, with a group as small, so far we've got 23 people on the call. A group this small will allow us to have more discussion and questions. Before we officially start, here's some other info. We are, of course, doing many more of these webinars as we get closer to the launch of these new wheelchair regulations for 2021. I've got currently 6 more scheduled starting in July all the way till December, which I'll share those dates with you today. And then I've got this one that we're doing now, which is sort of pre-TMT education, doing this one today, and then we're doing another one Thursday evening just to be able to accommodate everybody's schedule in case you are working during the day. With that being said, I've got 3 minutes past the hour, and I'm going to go ahead and officially begin, being respectful of everybody's time. So our first slide is basically what we're talking about today is USTA Wheelchair Tennis Education for 2021, and I'll dive into that here in just a second. But before I do, my name is Jason Allen. I'm the manager for wheelchair tennis for the USTA on the community tennis side. I'm happy to recognize a few VIPs on our call today as well. I'd like to first start by recognizing the director of wheelchair tennis and adult competition, Jo Wallen, who's my boss. She's going to be on the call with us today, and she'll be helping field any of the questions or comments you may have in the chat box. I'd also like to recognize my other colleague, Jason Harnett, who is joining us today. He is the manager or national manager of wheelchair tennis from the USTA player development side. He oversees all of Team USA, professional tennis. Of course, he still serves as a mentor to both me and Joe as it relates to wheelchair tennis. So happy that he's able to join us today. And if I am correct, I did see Jennifer Edmondson join the call, as well as Scott Elvin. Jennifer Edmondson is the chairperson of the National Wheelchair Tennis Committee, and Scott Elvin is the vice chair. So we're happy to have them on as well. Is there anybody else I missed, Joe, that I might want to recognize?
I want to just say as well, I'm cutting in here. We've got some other committee members on here as well. Evan, Jim. I don't know if anyone's on the phone there. And then also, just want to take a second, this has been a long process, which you'll see from Jason's presentation in a minute. And, one of the people there's a lot of people, obviously Jason's done a ton of work on it. The committee has, Jen, but Andrea Norman is also joining us, and she literally single-handedly has been, I don't think we would have got this done without her, and she's still answering questions from me today, where I think I've just lost my mind, and I'm not sure whether I've lost my mind going insane or whether I actually have some good points, but she's been there. So just thank her, and then Jason, you also for, everything you've done, and it's been a long process. So congrats to you and the team for getting us this far. We've got about another week or so before everything's finalized. So we just got to get through the next week. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you for those words, Joe. I'd like to echo, of course, the amazing help from Andrea. She's been a mentor to all of us, actually, and really appreciative of that. So let's dive into this thing. Again, we'll take any questions you may have in the chat box for now. If until then, it'd be really appreciative if you could mute your phones or devices or whatever. Just diving into why we're here. What are we doing? So the premise of this particular webinar we're doing today is you're going to see a collection of slides that will outline specific educational topics as they relate to USTA wheelchair tennis and its goal to align company-wide with the digital changes forthcoming on January 1, 2021. It does presuppose that there will be a great deal of nationwide education on the tournament management tool. We've been calling it here internally TMT. I've also heard it called Club Spark. It's basically just us replacing Tennis Link. And and it's going to be a much bigger and badder tool than Tennis Link was in so many different ways. What we had planned to do as a team, guys, was to start educating you on some of the sweeping changes to the wheelchair tennis landscape starting in July. But then, you know, Joe, my boss, Joe, jumped in before that and kind of made a really good point. She said, it's going to be very beneficial for us to let you all in on some of these wheelchair tennis changes before you start diving formally into the TMT training that you're going to go through, so that you can have in your mind some of these different levels and divisions and all these things to be aware of as you start learning what that space looks like. So that's why we're here. Today's agenda will cover timelines of where we started from, where we are now, the new levels, scoring and draw formats. We'll talk about the new divisions, the sanctioning and non-sanctioning issues, the timelines and guidelines for sanctioning. We're going to take a deeper dive into our eligibility list and our NSL, which stands for National Standings List, and seeding as well. We're going to talk about rankings and the rankings points. We're going to talk about some of the major changes that have occurred with the move-up requirement and then the appeal process for that. And then we'll briefly discuss a forthcoming tournament director manual. So as we jump, we just kind of want to show you where we started with this project and where we are now. So a long time ago, we decided to align with both the junior and adult space. I will say typically wheelchair, we are a smaller department and we understand that. And sometimes we kind of end up getting in after the fact when certain things happen within the USTA. And we're very fortunate this time around that we were able to jump head first with both the junior and the adult department in terms of getting our acts together and aligning all together company-wide as we start to approach this whole new digital space. So back in April 2019, we started this process of putting forth the changes that we wanted to make to the wheelchair tennis landscape. Before we made these changes, we conducted various focus groups, various committee calls, individual one-on-one feedback sessions, and really did our due diligence and our homework with the movers and shakers of wheelchair tennis in the country before we decided to make these changes. Once we did decide to make those changes, there was a couple of major things we did. We had it approved by the committee, and then we decided to create what we call a regulation document. And what that means is that we decided to take all of the rules and regulations, well, I wouldn't say all of them, but the majority of the rules and regulations have been removed from Friend at Court, and now we're going to reside in a regulation doc. The impetus behind that is that typically it's almost takes an act of God to make a change in Friend at Court. I'm being facetious somewhat, but obviously it is a big process to create a new call item and get things changed in Friend at Court. And we saw for our community with some of the changes that we're trying to make, that it would be beneficial for us to create a regulation doc that is a little bit more malleable and movable and changeable, because if some of these changes aren't taken well, or if we find that as a committee and as a group we don't like them after a year, it'll be a lot easier for us to make these changes later on. So that's what this particular slide shows you is the process from beginning until the end. And if you look at where we are now, our item regulation document has passed and it is complete. We are currently residing in the 21-day period in which the regulation document has been sent out to all the section EDs, the USTA board members, the delegates from each section, presidents, all of the big time movers and shakers within the USTA nationwide. And I believe, Joe, we are done with that period May the 12th, correct?
Sorry,
Sure.
I was on mute. Sorry. We're actually done collecting that information on the 30th, so on Thursday. And then we have committee meetings to go over those comments. And then if there's any changes, we have to take it back to legal. And then the week of the 12th, we're going to try and put out all the information online with all the education and information. So it's actually, they've only got 2 more days to put in comments.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So far, we've received 5 or 6 emails regarding feedback regarding our regulation document. They've been great, and so we're going to continue with that. The next slide I'd like to show you is more of a holistic panoramic view of education as it relates to TNT and nationwide what we're doing. Those of you who are on the call now are tournament directors, among others. And if you look at this timeline, we had sort of a kink in the chain with the COVID-19 pandemic, so we've had to make a couple of audibles. And last week is when the USTA section staff and district staff started to go over specific tournament management tool programming and training. So a lot of people are being now introduced to TMT, which is, again, our tournament management tool. I don't think it'll be called that later on. Maybe, you know, if Joe has any additional information on that, she can interrupt me at any time. Right now, we're calling it TMT. And then in May and June, the USTA section and district staff will receive further training as it relates to the tournament application and tournament desk. So my comment here is that all of the tournament directors nationwide are going to be involved in training as it relates to the entirely brand new digital space. I'm sure that you will have received communication regarding that training from section staff or your district staff, and I'm sure you're well aware of all that stuff. So again, the purpose of the call today is to give you a quick little overview of what to look for the wheelchair space as you dive into that TMT training. If you have any questions about the training and you're not quite sure where to go to, feel free to reach out to me and I'll point you in the right direction. As you can see in the July 2020 slot is when I'm going to officially begin the wheelchair tournament directors webinars. You're probably asking yourself, well, what are we doing here today? Well, I'm officially beginning it now, yes. Again, the reason behind doing it now is to get you ahead of your TMT training. And then after your TMT training, I'm going to continue to do webinars every month until we launch in January, just to make sure I'm able to hit all of the stakeholders in the wheelchair tennis world. Okay, here's a list of the webinars that I've currently scheduled, and I will be adding names to those and sending out invites. If you've already done the webinar and you're good to go, no need to accept the invitation, just disregard. Feel free to also send this invite out to any other person that you can think of. I know Lynn Bender had texted me earlier saying that there are a lot of people in the Midwest section that would love to know this information. So she's going to, of course, share the PowerPoint slides, and she's, of course, welcome to invite anybody onto these future webinars that I'll be holding. All right, any other thing on that before I dive into this, Joe, that you want to say?
Nope, go ahead.
All right, good. All right, well, let's take a look at some of the major changes we've made. As most of you are probably well aware, the USTA has departed from national category 1s, 2s, and 3s and category terminology. We're now referring to levels. So the junior and adult space have come up with 7 distinct levels that they're working on. And with those levels, they are talking about, you know, who approves them, whether they're open or closed, whether, you know, how long a tournament should last, the format suggested for each level, as well as the scoring formats available. The impetus behind that, of course, is to create one nationwide system that is way easier to understand, not only for our consumers, which are our most important asset, but also for tournament directors and providers so that we can streamline this process. As you see here on this slide, wheelchair tennis, of course, does not have as much play and infrastructure as the adult and junior side. So we condensed ours into 5 distinct levels. So if you want to be a level 1, you'll need national approval for that. Level 1 would be equivalent to your category 1 national championship. Of course, we're allowing 4 days for that. Those are the formats, and you can see the scoring formats. I'm not going to go through everything individually because you can see what we're looking at here. If you have any questions, ask. But basically, levels 1 through 3 are national levels. A level 3 can also be deemed as a sectional, non-national tournament if it's a closed sectional championship. And in that case, it would only need sectional approval. If you are interested in hosting a level 1, 2, or 3 tournament, that, of course, would administrative-wise come through me for approval. And I'll have a lot more information later on in this presentation regarding the sanctioning process and the bidding process and all that. Levels 4 and 5 are your local sectional level tournaments. The one major comment that I want to make, and I know that some people on this call will be very happy, such as Kendall Chitamber, to say that the main philosophical focus we've had in deciding duration, format, and scoring is within the wheelchair tennis world, we want to increase participation and play within each tournament. Long gone are the days of your single elim tournaments where you're going to go in and play one match and you're done. And you've spent all that money for a 4-day weekend trip to a tournament, and you basically are, you get to play one time and then you go home. We don't want to see that anymore, which is why we are heavily recommending the use of more participative formats such as the compass draws and the round robins, with or without playoffs, and feeding consolations later on down in the draw. We really do want to get away from the first match losers consolation if we can. We'd much rather see round robins and compass draws that promote more play. We do understand, though, at the national level ones, you're talking about a much larger population of player and usually not a lot of courts. So we do understand that there might be a necessity to have FMLCs at some of these events, but we are strongly recommending not to be doing those types of things. And as you can see down the levels, especially as it relates to levels 4 and 5, we're heavily focused on the compass and round robins in those levels. And of course, if you look at the scoring formats, the formats have been shortened in order to promote more matches, more match play in tournaments. So anything else with that? If not, I'm gonna move on. Again, just to reiterate, 5 levels. So as you go into TMT training and you start learning about all these things, you'll start to learn that when you choose a particular level that you want to bid a tournament for, you're only, let's take level 4, for example, you're only going to be allowed to choose one of those 4 formats. You can't choose any other format but that. And then the same as the scoring. If you're going to do a level 4, you'll only be able to choose from those scoring formats as well. Sorry, we've got 2 screens going. All right, let's get into the crux and nitty gritty of what we're talking about today. Biggest major change besides the one I just mentioned, which is that we have 5 levels and all those formats and whatnot. This is the one that's going to be a shock to most people if they didn't know that this was going on. And if you're not really too familiar with wheelchair tennis, this is new to you and it won't be a shock. We have for a long time had a lot of divisions in the wheelchair tennis community. When I run rankings on a weekly basis, I'm running rankings for almost 27 different divisions. And we had determined that the creation of so many divisions, although it gives people the ability to play across multiple divisions and be ranked in various places, and you'll be able to tout the fact that you have a high ranking in whatever division pertains to you, we have found that it's been actually detrimental to the growth of our sport because it makes tournaments very difficult to manage, and it makes the experience for the consumer not great as well. And I'll just give an example. Let's say I'm a men's B player and I want to enter a tournament and I want to play both singles and doubles. Well, there's only 2 other guys that signed up for men's B, and there's 5 guys in the men's A. The tournament director won't have a men's B, and I'll be forced to play in men's A, and then I won't get a ranking for my division. And I'll be forced to play against players that are maybe way better than me and maybe I'm not quite ready to play against. And then because of that, there's obviously not going to be a men's B doubles. So I end up having to be forced to play men's A doubles. And, because I'm not a very good player and I'm new and I'm a B player playing against A players, I might get beat first round and I'll be done. And then on top of that, the tournament director's got to figure out how to get me to play across 2 or 3 different divisions and make the tournament schedule work out with everyone. And it was just a nightmare, really, for tournament directors and for the players. So we decided as a committee, and then we vetted the idea out in various focus groups with other stakeholders as well, let's go to gender-neutral divisions. Let's try getting rid of the men's A, B, and C, the women's A, B, the quad A, the senior open, senior A open, all of these outlier divisions that literally when I run rankings for, there's only 7 to 10 people in these divisions. And out of the 80 tournaments we have nationwide, the draws only make maybe twice. Let's do away with all these divisions and strictly do divisions not based on gender and not based on disability. So with that being said, as you start to learn about TMT and how to bid for a tournament and how to use the tournament management tool, know that we will no longer have the men's and women's distinction or the quad distinction. It is strictly A, B, C, and D. These are gender neutral divisions, and they're not based on disability either. With that being said, we've also done a lot of work recently in the junior space. If anybody knows anything about wheelchair tennis, you know that the main thing we've been pressing lately is junior. So as it relates to official tournament play, we have created one junior division, and that's strictly 18 and under. And that 18 and under division will be using yellow ball on a full-size court. Later on, I'll talk about what we have in place for those juniors who may not be ready for that type of competition yet and still need to be using orange or green dot ball in the non-sanctioned space. But this right here is the main piece of information I need everyone to be aware of. A, B, C, and D are now our new divisions, and those are the divisions for which I'm running rankings, and then junior 18 and under. Obviously, juniors can play in the A, B, and C divisions as well. Any questions?
Hey, Jason, can you just talk real quick about the open divisions and where the rankings will be run as it pertains to ITF?
Yes, we're all going to be on this slide right here. So that's a perfect segue. Thank you for that, Joe. We're going to move now into discussing the difference between sanctioned and non-sanctioned. And so I think somebody has their, if everybody can mute their mics, please. Thank you. So for the sanctioned division, sanctioned meaning sanctioned by the USTA, and then I'll be running rankings for all these divisions. Sanctioned meaning adult, A, B, C, and D, like I just mentioned. And then for the junior space, 18 and under. But we will also still be running USTA rankings for the men, women, and quad open divisions. And with that, I want to make something very clear that I probably should have done at the very beginning of this presentation, which is to make sure that everyone understands that what we are talking about right now is only relatable to USTA divisions and tournaments. All of us in the wheelchair tennis world know very well that we have the ITF component, and we have 12 ITF professional events that happen nationwide that are also married with a USTA event. So for the purpose of this presentation, we are strictly discussing just the USTA tournaments right now. With that being said, I do want to briefly discuss that the open divisions, meaning men's, women's, and quad open, those are the professional divisions. Those would be divisions in which an ITF sanction would occur and professional players would be playing and prize money would be won. However, the reason I've listed them here on this slide is to make sure everyone still knows that the USTA will still be running rankings for those divisions. Okay? So again, I want to make that very clear. Open divisions are ITF professional. You won't be bidding for sanctioning on those as it relates to USTA. That's run by the ITF. But we will still be running rankings for those. Joe, is that good enough? Did I cover that okay?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, good. Now let's talk briefly about the non-sanctioned space. Really important to understand that basically that means anything goes. So with those people that have had concerns that they've brought to us about, well, you know, I'm a quad player and I'd love to have a quad A division in my tournament, or I'm a senior player, I'm 55 and over, I'd love to still run a senior event. Absolutely. You, as a tournament director in the non-sanctioned space, can run any event you want. Anything you want to do, anything goes. Run, roll, up, down, senior, quad A, junior, whatever in the non-sanctioned space. It's just that no rankings are going to be run for those divisions anymore. And then as it relates to the junior space, for those juniors who are not quite ready for tournament competition with the yellow ball and full-size courts, we are really going to be taking lead from the Net Generation space and what they're doing as it relates to the team challenges and the round robins and all those other products that are going out through Net Generation that, that we're very proud of. And I think the Net Generation is knocking it out of the park right now with what they're doing for juniors, and we are extremely happy and proud to be riding their coattails and doing what they're doing. And then lastly, in the non-sanctioned space, I'd like to mention something called the Round Robin app. There is no official name for this yet, just to let you know that. We're just calling it this now. There's basically been an app that's been created by the USTA in which it makes it extremely easy to run a round robin. I mean, you can literally, as a tennis pro, be on court, open up this app, stick names in, and run a tournament like that with no preparation whatsoever. What we want to do is dive deeply into this round robin app in our non-sanctioned space, because I think that this app is going to be huge and beneficial for our wheelchair tennis community, especially as it relates to our grantees and the programming they're doing, our next generation junior wheelchair tennis providers and all the new programs they're running. It's just a quick, easy way to have a quick social event during one of your clinics, or have a 1-day, 2-hour event on the weekend. And of course, from my side, I love it because not only it's user friendly, but it's also going to help us track numbers a little bit in order to see what's going on out there, and really be able to show the USTA how active our wheelchair tennis community is. All right, moving on if there's nothing here, Joe.
You're good.
All right, let me move briefly into sanctioning. I'm not going to spend hardly any time on this because there's still a lot yet to be done in this space for us to present to you. I will have all of the information ready to go and presented to you in a specific way by July when we start our webinars. But just a quick few bullet points here. Obviously, for sanctioning purposes, the host site has to be a member organization. The application deadline, if you want to apply for national levels 1 through 3, will be August 1st for the following year. So if you want to run an event, you want to host a national level 1, 2, or 3 in February of 2022, you will have had to put that sanction in by August 1st of 2021 is all that means. And then, of course, like I said earlier, information will be forthcoming in regards to tournament agreements, contracts, and an amenities wish list. And again, guys, I'd love to reiterate that I'm specifically talking about only here running levels 1 through 3 with national approval. Obviously, the sanctioning guidelines that are in place for your section or district will be managed by them, and that's not our space, and we don't want to step on those toes. So I'm only talking about running national levels here. All right, here's where we're going to take a little bit more of a deeper dive into what we're calling the eligibility list, our national standings list, and our seeding list. So if you'll bear with me for a moment, one of the most difficult endeavors about making all these changes is, and I have actually spoken a great deal with the junior space on this because they have done what they call a reset a few times. Lou Brew told me that they've done a rankings reset or a divisions reset, and he's explained to me some of the pitfalls and things to look for in that. Basically what we're doing is we're starting from scratch. We are pretty much changing all the divisions that currently exist with year-end rankings, with our national standings monthly rolling list. All those rankings will cease to exist once January 1, 2021 comes around. So that begs the question, how are we going to decide, or how does one decide which division to play in when they start playing tournaments? Well, what we've done is understood that although there are 25 to 27 different divisions in which people play, the majority of players actually end up playing in all of the men's A, B, and C divisions. And even if you're a women's B player or a women's A player, for example, the women's A division, I think there were 27 ranked players in that division last year with year-end rankings. All 27 of those women played more men's division tournaments than they did women's division tournaments. So as we move into our new space, we're going to take a look at those men's A, B, and C divisions. And we're going to place players in either division A, B, or C based on their year-end ranking from 2020. Hopefully that makes sense. So if my name is Jason Allen and I am a woman B player and I'm ranked 15 in the nation in women's B, when that new eligibility list comes out, Jason Allen, the national administrator, will have looked at how you did in either the men's A, B, or C divisions and will place you in a division according to how well you've done in match play against ability based players. Hopefully that makes sense. Any questions there? Joe, am I making sense or am I off base here?
Nope, you're good. And if anyone has any questions, again, they don't want to interrupt or they don't want to put it out, they can chat me. I'm ready.
Good. So how are we going to determine this eligibility list? I want to go over that just briefly. So like I said, we're going to look at year-end rankings from the A, B, and C division and see where people ended up. We're also going to take into account head-to-head matches, and we're going to have a whole committee based from the National Wheelchair Tennis Committee that will deal with individual cases that may have some gray area. Once we've decided and we've finalized that eligibility list, we're going to publish it and send it out to everyone. And then we'll have a period after that in which players can individually appeal. And there's going to be more information that I'll have later on down the road when we start our July webinars of that official exact process for appeal. But for the first eligibility list, there'll be an electronic appeal, and then we'll deal with appeals electronically. And then if you're still not happy with the decision made from that electronic appeal, then you can then move into the appeal process that's done officially by paper, laid out in the regulation doc. Okay, any questions with the eligibility list before I move on to NSL and seeding? Good. So all of you guys are on this call because you're tournament directors. And so you're thinking to yourself, all I'm going to have is an eligibility list. So how am I going to deal with seeding? Hold on, Charles is asking. Yeah, the eligibility list, Charles, will be, Carlos, I should call you, will be for A, B, C, and D. I don't really suspect off the bat that we'll have many people, or if any at all, in the D division. We're going to let the D division work itself out over the next 3 or 5 years. So this is wheelchair tennis, Carlos. This is USTA only, and it's an eligibility list in order to have people placed in the divisions that they're going to enter in tournaments, which will again help tournament directors figure out where to place people. Joe, did I just see another question come through?
Yeah, Michael Smith says, does this mean whatever division you are in, it all starts at 0 points for everyone?
Yeah, great question. So yes, so as we start the new year, everybody's starting at 0 points. And that's what I meant by that whole reset. We are resetting. And as players begin to play tournaments over the course of the year, we're going to build ranking points up. We're going to have names in, and we're also going to have our national monthly rolling standing list be finalized around August. So let me delve into that space a little bit. So NSL stands for National Standings List. What that means is that every single month we look at the rankings. And actually in our space, it's weekly. You know, I run rankings on a weekly basis. So it's more so of a weekly rolling standing list, to be honest. But most tournament directors look at the national standings list to seed players. And of course, these lists are based on a year. And I think I read an email earlier from Andrea Norman where we got to kind of get away from saying yearly and stick more to like a 52-week period. So every 52 weeks or a 52-week period, you have a national standings list. And that changes every week and every month as you go along. And so we're starting from zero, starting from scratch, day one. And then, of course, what we're telling tournament directors to do when we start this is we're obviously going to have to use the all factors method to seed players as we start running tournaments January 1, 2021. All factors meaning looking at the eligibility list, looking at the year-end rankings from 2020, from 2019, from 2018, making a phone call to me, calling Jason Harnett, calling a previous tournament director, looking at head-to-head matchups, looking at all factors, all methods you can think of to seed players appropriately. And then starting August 1, 2021, then we'd like to turn it back over to using the monthly rolling standing list to determine tournament seeding. Any questions there? All right. Let's talk about rankings. So rankings now, as it relates to USTA divisions, will be run weekly, as I've been doing before. And they'll be run for A, B, C, D, 18 and under juniors, and then don't forget, it will also be run for men's, women's, and quad open divisions, remembering that those open divisions are ITF only, but we do want to run rankings for them in the ranking space. With that being said, we actually did a lot of work and worked very hard on trying to correct an issue in the wheelchair tennis community that had been going on for quite some time in terms of points disparities. We noticed that because we have so many ITF divisions that have a USTA tournament involved, you know, a player could have played in a Category 1 tournament, won one match, and got 600 points for winning a match, and all of a sudden they're ranked number 5 in the nation, and they're being forced to move up from level C to B, and they're not ready for that. So we decided to really make huge changes to the points table that we use for establishing rankings, and I'm going to briefly dive into that. So the junior space presented to us a new points table system based on the winner of a level 1 tournament receiving 3,000 points, and then of course waterfalling down as you go through the levels and through the rounds in a tournament. So we've used that points table. The only difference is, instead of using the percentages that the juniors in the adult space are using, we have now waterfalled from a level 1 down to a level 5 by increments of 20%. So if you win a level 1, you get 100% of those 3,000 points. If you win a level 2, you get 80%. If you win a level 3, you get 60%. If you win a level 4, you get 40%. And if you win a level 5, you get 20%. Of course, the percentages of the 3,000 total points. I worked very hard on this with Michael Hughes and Nick Taylor. Everybody knows Nick Taylor. Nick is an expert at rankings and points tables, and I feel very confident that the new rankings points tables that we're going to be using as we start in January of 2021 are going to be a breath of fresh air to the wheelchair tennis community. I will be looking forward to getting some feedback on that once we start. Any questions on that? Those points tables and all those things will be shared on USTA.com. I had previously thought about sharing the new points tables on this webinar, but it's just really a lot of minutia to get involved in. But it will be up on the USTA.com website once we get past this this 21-day period where people are looking at our new regulations. I just saw a question come through from Kevin, where there'll be a minimum or a maximum of tournaments at each level used to cap points. Yes. Again, Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in our regulation doc it says a minimum of 4 tournaments. You have to have a minimum of 4 tournaments in order to have a year-end ranking, which I do not believe is a change from our previous system.
It's not a minimum. It's a best of. I believe it's a best of 4. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes,
if you only
best
play
of 4.
2, yeah, best of 4.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So Kevin, it's not a minimum. It's your best 4 tournaments of the year. All right. Any other questions? Good. Now, for those of you who have been involved in wheelchair tennis for a while, you know, or you're very well versed on the move up, move down list. The move up, move down list was our manual answer to the other side of the house with leagues as it relates to NTRP divisions. The NTRP divisions moves people up and down based on how they perform. And of course, the wheelchair tennis department tried to create something like that. And so, honestly, the move up, move down list has been problematic in so many different ways based on the points table issue and other things that I don't want to get into. Basically, what we've done is we've changed the space greatly. We are no longer going to have a move down. The move down portion is done over with kaput. The only thing that will exist from now on out is a move up requirement. So if you finish in the top 5% of the B, C, or D divisions at the end of the year, you must move up. There is no move up requirement to the open divisions because that's the professional. So if you're an A, you stay in A unless you want to become a professional. So if there's 100 people ranked in the C division and I'm ranked in the top 5, then I have to move up to the next division. And that's basically it. There is no move down. Once you move up, that's it. we will have a move down appeal from here on out. So following the year-end ranking publication, if a player wishes to appeal their eligibility, this must be done in writing via email. And I will have more information about that. It'll be put on the website, the form that we're going to use, all the considerations we take into account, and that will be a committee-based decision. I know it may come as a shock to some of you. You're thinking, why can't we move down? The problem with moving down in the past has been related to the major disparities we've had with the point system and participation points and things like that. So out of 100 people, I might have had 30 to 35 people ranked in the men's A division that only had 1 or 2 points or really didn't belong there in the first place. And so it just didn't work out. So this move down requirement is just not necessary. If there's an extenuating circumstance, or if there are mitigating factors such as an injury or age or things like that that may require you to want to move down, we're happy to take an appeal and do that. I don't want to project too far into the future, but obviously we are in talks with being involved in what we're calling the world tennis number and getting involved in maybe one day being able to have a system in which players can move up and move down just like the juniors and the adults will, but we're not there yet. So right now, our answer is to have an eligibility list and a move up requirement, but not a move down. Not really sure what you mean by that, Kendall. Let me reread that. Kendall says, eventually, could that lead to a larger and larger group of higher level groups? Maybe some clarification on that, Kendall. Just type that in there, please. Oh, okay, I get what you're saying. Like, I see what you're saying. I don't think it's going to end up being that big of an issue, Kendall, because we're only talking about moving up 5%. And with the new points tables that we have, I believe that the move up requirement will be extremely fair. Meaning that if a player finishes in the top 5% of a division, they really need to move up to the next. They really do, because they're ready for that. Hope that answers your question. All right. Coming to a close here, one of the things that I'm very proud and happy to announce, we've taken advantage of some of this time during the pandemic to really think about some of the things that can benefit our tournament directors. And we've decided as a wheelchair committee and staff to dive into creating an ITF tournament directors manual as well as a USTA tournament directors manual. Some of you out there may be thinking, well, I understand we already have an ITF wheelchair tennis manual. That's correct. We have an ITF wheelchair tennis manual, but not a specific tournament director manual. There are lots of ins and outs in running these tournaments, and we really want to be able to have more tournaments that are both of ITF and USTA nature, and we want to be able to attract more tournament directors to our space. In doing so, I think we need to do a better job at educating those tournament directors and giving them a good panoramic view of what it entails to run one of these events. So the committee and I are going to be working hard over the next couple of weeks to finalize these tournament director manuals. And by the time we start our official webinars for education in July, we will have those done and we'll be able to send out to everybody. All these manuals will, of course, include and take a deep dive into everything discussed in this webinar, and it will be a good wealth and source of knowledge for everyone. With that being said, I'd like to now open up the floor to any questions or discussion that anybody has, or if I've missed anything. Yep.
Somebody's got to have questions, comments, somebody.
I doubt I'm just that good of a presenter. I will say I know the majority of people on this call have in some way, shape, or form heard most of this before. And I can even see people, I even see Harlan on the call, Harlan Matthews. I've even spoken to him individually about all of these changes, and he's, from what I can recall, quite ecstatic about them. And some of our other people, like I saw Melissa Kress, Ken Hayden, they of course know most of this stuff as it relates to the ITF space, but Kim Osmond might be someone this is completely brand new to. Other than that, any questions or concerns? Appreciate that, Kim.
So. Yeah, we hope so. The other part of this as well, being now out of front of court too, is as Jason said, is able to change anything much quicker. And we could only do it, it took an act of Congress literally to get anything changed, even if it was a word. So if we realize or we see anything, like Kendall, you say, all of a sudden we've got like all these numbers, we don't have that. We're literally in a 21-day process to change it. So that's what is really good about it too.
Good question from Harlan, and I know him and I have spoken about that before. Financial support as it relates to USTA level 1, 2, and 3 tournaments. I'm going to let actually Joe field that question. She's a little bit more familiar with that space on the adult side. We're trying to align with that space, so I'm going to let her field that.
Gee, thanks, Jason. Let me have a hard question. So right now on the in the adult space, we actually only give grant money for category 1s. We don't do it for the other events. So we do need to, it's something that we need to look at, Harlan. So I haven't got a specific answer for you yet. I can't imagine us doing much for 2s and 3s, but 1s possibly. And we just have to look at budgets right now. And Jason and I tried to have this conversation. I think it's a bad time to have this conversation and look at budgets and say, okay, we've got all the ITF ones and we've got this, and now what do we do? So I've told him to hold off on the conversation for right now.
Yeah. Obviously in our world,
answer.
in our space, we are smaller, and support from national can come in many different ways, shapes, and forms, financial, in kind. So for those of you who are wanting to bid some of these national tournaments, we'll help you make it happen.
Evan, keep going. I think regarding Net Gen play, then you've stopped.
Yeah, maybe he just wants me to speak a little bit more about Net Generation.
Can you hear me real quick, Jay?
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Evan.
All right, I'll just unmute myself a lot easier. You briefly mentioned it. If you have a tournament director, we're encouraging a lot of junior play. I think in the future, a lot of tournaments are going to want divisions, and maybe some may or may not be ready for yellow ball. Comment some more on how juniors are going to be included in the tournament structure, and if they're not in that yellow ball ranking, how will that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I spoke to a little bit earlier about us taking lead from the Net Generation team with some of the events that they run with their team challenges and their round robins. All of those events occur on the non-sanctioned space. And quite honestly, I'm looking towards my Net Generation regional providers to help tournament directors in their particular regions get juniors to come and play at these events, albeit in the non-sanctioned space. Obviously, we don't want to throw them to the wolves, but I'm happy to help tournament directors work through TMT as it relates to putting a non-sanctioned division in an already existing tournament. So obviously as a committee, and of course, those that don't know, Evan Inquist is the one leading the charge for our Net Generation junior wheelchair tennis strategy currently. We're going to be looking a lot towards you, Evan, to help bring awareness to tournament directors using the regional providers in the area to get those divisions in. All right. If there's anything else that you think of after this call, webinar, you can always email me, Joe, Jason Harn, and anybody that you know in the community, and we'll help answer the questions. I felt good about this webinar. I think we were able to really get across some of the main points we wanted to make. It is recorded. I'm going to be sending it to you all after we're done. Feel free to send it out to everyone else in the community. Joe, if you have nothing else.
No, I don't.
All right. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day. And it was a pleasure speaking with you. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.